Welcome. In this particular session, what we want to discuss is issues pertaining to human resource management audit. So, when you talk about audit, I think in general, people have been associating this with the financial audit, to say where auditors will come and be able to check the financial position of an organization, maybe at the end of the year, or maybe once. These are the external auditors, but also there are moments whereby the internal auditors also do their work in terms of uh, quality control of the activities of the organization. They act as an assurance component of the organization to ensure whatever is being done in line with whatever policies, or maybe the practices, could be the ICT practices, the financial practices. Yeah, so at first, as I was saying, people looked at audit as a financial audit, but nowadays things have changed to say now people are looking at the holistic. The auditors now are looking at the whole organization, and this also encompasses the human resource management audit. So you find that the human resource management audit is one of the functions which the internal audit people have to undertake, for example, whenever they are carrying their routine audits within the organization. At the same time, even external auditors are also looking at the human resource management audit to see if whatever is happening within the organization is in line with the policies, the best practices, the law, and all that. And what we need to appreciate is in the audit in general, there are issues of maybe they can do the transport audit, they can do the stores audit, they can do the financial audit. I'm talking about they can do about the customer relations audit. For example, are you how do they how are you servicing your customers? For example, you can have a service charter, for example, so they'll be checking to say in whatever you are doing, are able to respond to queries of customers, for example, in light of the service charter, for example. Yeah, so how are you taking care of the customers, for example? So the auditors will be able to look at all those things, and they can use different techniques to do their audit to understand all that. And also issues of maybe the service providers, maybe how are they servicing you in terms of maybe the contract, what did you agree, and maybe whatever you had agreed in the contract, is it being done as agreed in the contract? For example, I'll give an example. You might have a cleaning company that is cleaning at your organization, but maybe in the contract it was agreed that there is need for 5 cleaners. So the auditors will be checking to say, do they really does the company really provide the 5 cleaners? Are they provided the uniforms and all that? Because that's part of the contract that was agreed to say the supplier will be able to provide uniforms to his or her employees, but the auditors now will be able to check that to say, have they been able to provide that uniform? Those uniforms are the cleaners being provided, the security guards, it could be the landscapers, yeah, it could be the insurance company, for example, in terms of the service that they are providing to the organization. Are we doing the way the contract is specifying? So the audit is holistic nowadays. It doesn't just look at the financial aspect, but it's looking all angles of the organization. In the production side, how are you producing your products? For example, are you following is there conformity with the best practices and all that? Yeah, they're also bringing in other experts. Yeah, so you might find the audit, instead of just having the financial auditors, they might have maybe the HR person, they might have an ICT person, they might have an engineer, for example. If it's a production company, for example, they might have maybe, or even if it's an engineering company, they might have an engineer to audit the engineering processes which are in the organization. Yeah, so sometimes these things tend to happen in bigger organizations. They might have to have the people who are experts in different areas to do the audit. So you can have the audit be done by the internal audit, but also at the same time can be done by the external auditors. But the focus of this session, we are looking at now the human resource management audit to say, for example, do you what is it that the auditors who can be checking when they have come to audit your organization, or what can the internal auditors be checking when they are within your organization? So I think some of the issues is related to policies, for example. What kind of policies do you have, and are you adhering to such kind of policies? For example, the recruitment, are you doing in line with the recruitment procedures, for example, the policy? I'll give an example. If the policy says that maybe you should advertise for a space of 2 weeks, for example, from the time you advertise to the time you close, so they'll be able to check whether your adverts are conforming to that. For example, if you are saying shortlisting will be done maybe by 3 people or 4 people, did you do all the shortlisting in light of that? And also at the same time, interviews, how many people should be on the interviews, for example, on the interview panel? So did you, when you were carrying out your interviews, did you follow your policy, for example? So the internal auditor will be checking, or the external auditor will be checking conformity of the processes that you carried out in light of the policy that you have within the organization. So we might be able to appreciate that, to say they will be looking at the conformance. So when they see that there is no conformity, then it becomes an issue to say maybe you haven't done well in terms of the processes that you have undertaken within the organization, for example. So you look at issues of even probation, for example. How long did it take for an employee to be confirmed? So if an employee is taking 10 months without being communicated anything, yet the probation is for 6 months, they'll be able to pick those things and be able to say, this employee, this kind of employees were not confirmed on time. What were the reasons, for example? Yeah, if they were, but was there communication to them, maybe regarding were they assessed after the 6 months to conclude to say they were not performing, or maybe they were just like laissez-faire, whereby someone was just like not doing his job to do their performance appraisals of these particular employees. So that's what is very, very important for us to appreciate the role of the auditors when it comes to auditing of the organizations. The idea is to improve the processes, for example, to say how, or maybe when you are doing the recruitment, for example, you might look at to say, was when you are recruiting this person, did you do the reference checks, for example? Yeah, did you do the police checks, for example? Yeah, did you send requests for references, for example? Yeah, was the references positive or negative, or you ignored them, for example? So all this they'll check the recruitment file, for example, and be able to conclude to say where all the processes that are supposed to be covered within the policy, under the recruitment policy, were they done or were they carried out. Yeah, so they will be able to look at all that, and where are the minutes, for example, for the interviews, where are the minutes for the shortlisting, or the report for the shortlisting, or the report for the interviews. So they'll be able to conclude that where are the performance management, for example, where are the reports for the performance management. Yeah, they also look at, for example, training. Yeah, what does your training policy say? Yeah, to say maybe people have to have training plans within their divisions, while their training plans done by the respective departments. Yeah, or you may be saying the committee has to meet and be able to review the requests for trainings. Did the committee meet? Or maybe it was a decision that was made by one person. So they will be looking at your own policy to ensure that there is conformance with the policy, for example. At the end of the day, is to bring some kind of objectivity in the whole process. Yeah. So that's also very, very important, and also what we need to appreciate, for example, to say, if you say, for example, they were sent for training. If the policy, training policy says, to say the employee has to bring a report, for example, from the training. There was the report presented. He has to disseminate the whatever he has learned. There was the dissemination done. Where is the evidence? Or maybe the attendance register of the people who had attended the dissemination. It can be on online, but you should be able to provide some kind of evidence to say this activity really was done. So that's what is very, very important for us to appreciate when it comes to issues of training, and what can auditor check in the course of auditing. Performance management, for example, yeah, the auditor will be able to check the performance management of the organization in terms of where they KPIs agreed. Yeah, so they'll be able to check with the employee, but also with the supervisor to say where the KPIs agreed. Yeah, so if the KPIs were agreed, when was the assessment done? Yeah, was the assessment done objectively? So the auditors will also be checking all these things to see if what impact after the performance management, for example, after the performance assessments were done, what were the outcomes and what was found out and how were they addressed, for example. So all these issues are very, very important for us to appreciate when it comes to performance management, and the auditor will be able to pick some kind of those things and be able to present to management areas which were not done properly, for example, in the whole performance management for the organization. Issues of succession planning, maybe, for example, how were some people promoted within the organization. So they'll be able to look at the procedures that you have in place for promoting people and what kind of mentoring, coaching sessions you have. Are these kind of things. Because succession planning is not just a matter of promoting someone, but also it's a matter of having the systems in place for mentoring and coaching to ensure that you prepare the employees for senior positions. So that's also very, very important for us to appreciate. And also the other thing is that we need to appreciate is also to look at the auditor will be looking at the safety and health of the employees. Yeah, maybe I'll give an example. Yeah, if you have got an HIV policy and the HIV policy talks about distribution of condoms, yeah, the auditor will be able to look at to say, are you able to do that, for example? Yeah, yeah, in terms of the safety, yeah, and the kind of office environment, the heat, yeah, some kind of the environment that the employee is working. Yeah, they'll be able to look at that to say, is it conducive for work, for example? The cleanliness of the workplace and all that, even the security, how strong are the motor vehicles, for example, because these are concerning staff, for example, they're concerning staff. So they might be looked at to say the tools that they are using, are they worthy to be used, for example, by the employee. So they are looking at all these issues in relation to the occupational safety and health of the employees, yeah, even including welfare issues to say what are the welfare policies to say and what is happening in terms of the welfare of the employees. But also at the same time, the auditors will also be looking at the terms and conditions of service of the organization to see if it's in line, whatever is happening within the organization is in line with the terms and conditions of service. So sometimes you might find that maybe we have very good terms and conditions of service, but we are not implementing most of the issues which are in the terms and conditions of service. But now, why should we have something in the terms and conditions of service which cannot be implemented, for example? So the auditor will be able to question that to say, maybe if you don't have resources, so why can't you review the terms and conditions of service so that you have something that is implementable within the organization, for example? Yeah? If you are saying some employees are entitled to overtime and you are asking them maybe when they work overtime, they're not paid overtime, they're paid something else. So we're going to be asking to say, the auditor will be asking to say, why should you pay something for work done outside the working hours to an employee when you have got the provision for overtime, for example? So I think these are some of the things that we should also be able to appreciate and be mindful when we have terms and conditions of service to say what are procedures have to be followed in this particular scenario, for example. Yeah, so you're talking about checking the performance with HIV AIDS management policy, for example. As you are aware, we have the HIV AIDS Management Act. Yeah, so we should also be able to look at that to say, are we conforming to the HIV AIDS Management Act, for example? What kind of support are we supposed to provide? What does our policy say in terms of the support we should be able to provide to the employees? Yeah, is there awareness about HIV AIDS meetings? How many meetings happened within the year, for example? So the auditor will be looking at to say awareness. How many times do you carry the awareness? What kind of activities have we done in relation to HIV? Are there no discrimination in one way or another in terms of because of one's HIV status? So these are some of the things which are very, very important. And also, yeah, during the time we had COVID around 2021, 2022, yeah, there are those issues to do with the policies that were there. For example, are you adhering to such kind of, it can be any other disease, so are you conforming to any other disease, to any other policy that is coming up due to other communicable diseases within the organization? So how responsive are you to such kind of policies. Yeah, look at the GPA, the workers' compensation. How are you adhering? Are the employees, when they have been injured within the workplace, are they being compensated in light of the Workers' Compensation Act, for example? Or maybe you might have a GPA policy. Are you compensating the employees? And what are the circumstances that are leading to such kind of, and what kind of mitigation measures are you putting in place to ensure that the employees are covered, or they are being compensated in one way or another when they are injured, and what kind of protective things are being done to ensure that the employees don't get injured within the organization. This also goes well with the occupational safety and health of the organization. So these are some of the important things that we should be considering whenever we are carrying out HR auditing, to ensure that whatever we are doing is in line with the law, but also the relevant policies that we have as an organization, because we have the policy which has to be followed, we have the law which has to be followed. You look at even deductions, for example. If the terms and conditions service says maybe what kind of deductions can be made on an employee, are those deductions being made? Yeah, maybe if someone has got a loan, the deduction shouldn't exceed 50% of his basic, for example. So we should be looking at that to say, are we following the 50%? Because maybe the Employment Act states that, but also at the same time, the terms and conditions of service provide that. So we should be able to adhere to that. Are we adhering to that, for example? Yeah. But also sometimes we look at the temporary employees. Yeah. If there is a policy in terms of the temporary employees, how are they supposed to be engaged, and how long can they work for the organization? Of course, the law doesn't recognize temporary employees. It's either you have employees on a specified contract or on a specific task. Yeah, so it all depends on what you have chosen to do as an employer. But assuming you might have such kind of employees who are working for a shorter period, for example. So how long are they working within the normal time frame? What kind of benefits are applicable to such kind of employees? Yeah. For example, an organization might be have a lot of dismissals, terminations. Yeah, so they'll also be looking at the auditors will be looking at to say, maybe how were you carrying out your dismissals? Were you carrying out them fairly, or did you give the right to be heard to the employees? Did you give the right for appeal, for example, where the offense is valid, for example? So all these issues will be looked into by the auditors to see whether you are doing the right things or not. So this is also very, very important, and that's why this kind of audit, it has to be done by someone who is very knowledgeable in the labor law, but also in the HR based practices, which is also very, very important. Yeah. An employer cannot be limiting pay years you earn, for example. Some employers cannot be limiting the pension, for example. So the audit also be looking at to say, how are you limiting the discretionary, the mandatory deductions that have been made on an employee, the pay as you earn, and also the pension, and how are you complying to the Pension Act, for example? Do we have some employees who are not on pension, and why do we have such kind of employees? Because pension doesn't say whether one is temporary or not. Everyone has to be on pension. So that's what is also very, very important for us to appreciate. So we should also be appreciative of that, to say who should be on pension. It's everybody has to be on pension. So are they on pension, the employees? Yeah. So issues of medical schemes, for example. Yeah. So how are you able to pay the premiums for medical insurance, for example? Raise in salaries. They can be able to look at retrenchments. How are you calling your retrenchments? Among many other issues which are important within the organization. So what I'm trying to say is the HR audit will be looking at all those issues. Do you have the restrooms for women, for example, in terms of gender, for example? Yeah. Do you have the restrooms for men, for women, and among other things? So they will be looking at all these things to ensure that the organization is complying with the best labor practices within the organization. That's why it is important the ones to do this kind of audit should be experienced HR professionals. Not HR, sometimes may not be, but people who are conversant with the labor laws and also the HR best practices and policies, because they will be able to question to say, because they will be looking at your organization to say, are you doing the right things? If you're not doing the right thing, then they'll be able to check all those things. So issues of safety of the organization, and they can come up with a risk register, because they can come up with a risk register which is going to document all the risks and also maybe the remedial measures that can be done, or they can ask yourselves to propose the remedial measures and how long are you going to do those things and to adhere to be conforming to the policies and also the law which is there. So there are some of the things that you have to do in an audit. Anyway, you can engage Change on that group if you want to carry out a natural audit. We are willing to come to your organization and do the HR audit just to see the performance of whatever you are doing in light of the labor law, but also at the same time the different policies, in light of the terms and conditions of service that you have. It will be done. Thank you so much.